This man's been referred to as an environmental catastrophe all on his own. He has had more effect on the atmosphere of the Earth than any other creature ever to exist in our world. He invented two of the single most damaging chemicals ever created. One of them poisoned the brains of millions of children, the other completely depleted the ozone layer. Yet he was not evil. He was a brilliant inventor who believed he was doing the right thing, who received every major award available during his lifetime. Sadly, however, he was not killed by any of the chemicals he invented, but rather was smothered by his last creation, the ultimate irony of his life. This is the sad tale of Thomas Midgley Jr. The year is now 1920 and the auto industry is experiencing a major crisis. The car engines are producing a loud knocking sound. They severely affect the engine's ability to work properly, as well as reduce the car's fuel efficiency. General Motors needed a quick fix for this issue. Therefore, they sought the expertise of a young, exceptionally bright engineer, Thomas Midgley Jr., and charged him with developing an additive to help eliminate the knocking. Midgley is a chemist who has not been to college. He has tried almost every type of chemical available. Iodine does a great job but costs too much to use. Ethanol works well for evoking spark and can cause larger companies to lose money, so it can't be used either. On December 9, 1921, Midgley tests a different combination of chemical compounds and arrives at the conclusion that tetrethyl lead is the best solution to stop knocking in manufacture of gasoline. It is cheaper than iodine or ethanol and stops knocking immediately. Unfortunately, lead is extremely toxic and a highly poisonous neurotoxin. Lead poisoning has been known for thousands of years and causes loss of vision, insanity, kidney failure, and death. General Motors and Midgley did not let that discourage them and forged ahead with production and distribution. They named the gasoline ethyl to help hide the word lead from public knowledge. 2 days after production of ethyl began, there were major problems with the workers at the plant where ethyl was produced. Employees were hallucinating about butterflies and some died. The place was nicknamed the House of Butterflies. There was a fairly large turnout of press at the time and curiosity regarding the use of the substance ethyl. To put to rest concerns, Midgley held his press conference in 1924 and presented himself as an example of strength against the dangers of using ethyl. He poured it on his hands, inhaled the vapors for 1 minute, and told everyone, "I could do that every day of my life with no negative consequences." The public was misled by Midgley's publicity stunt for leaded gasoline, as he was already suffering from severe lead treatment, resulting in 43 months of secret treatment in Florida to recover from his lungs, which were failing due to the lead he had ingested. However, he was able to secure approval for the use of leaded gasoline, eventually leading to the release of millions of pounds of lead from every car around the globe. Now we know that the lead used in gasoline caused an entire generation of children with reduced IQs, premature deaths, and increased rates of violent crimes worldwide. Midgley had unknowingly poisoned humanity with leaded gasoline. But Midgley was not done. Another problem arose in the late 1920s. Refrigerators leaked chemicals such as ammonia that were poisonous. If an ammonia leak occurred, a family could be killed while sleeping. General Motors again called on Midgley to find a way to create a safe, non-poisonous refrigerant. He returned to his lab and in only 3 days invented a new group of chemicals which he called chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, and which General Motors branded as Freon. Once again, Midgley was able to demonstrate his creation with a dramatic spectacle. He inhaled a lungful of Freon, blew a candle out, and stated, "See, neither toxic nor flammable," therefore providing proof that it was safe. Miraculously, Freon was so popular that it quickly became the main component of all refrigerators and air conditioners, as well as in every aerosol can in the world. Midgley was now hailed a hero. It took many years before scientists finally figured out what was going on. They discovered that when Freon reached the upper atmosphere, it broke down ozone molecules, creating a hole in the Earth's protective ozone layer and exposing all forms of life to lethal doses of UV radiation. Thomas Midgley was celebrated as the rock star of science, as his inventions blithely destroyed the planet. He rose to the presidency of the American Chemical Society and won a number of awards including the Priestley Medal, the Perkin Medal, and the Willard Gibbs Medal, and was credited as the person most responsible for enhancing modern civilization. He was completely unaware of the environmental destruction that he was causing and died believing that he was a benefactor to humanity. It wasn't until many years after his death that the truth about his contribution to environmental disaster would be known. However, fate had one last cruel twist to deliver. In 1940, Thomas Midgley contracted polio at the age of 51, which left him with profound disabilities and paralyzed him from the waist down. As he lay in bed, he was unable to move without the help of others. Despite his physical limitations, he was still an inventor at heart and hated depending on anyone else to help him move. Therefore, he built a device to help him get up out of bed and move himself around. On top of his bed, Thomas Midgley Jr. constructed a series of complex ropes, pulleys, and bars to allow him to raise himself and turn over by himself. His creation was a source of pride for him. On November 2, 1944, at about 9 a.m., his wife came into his room where she discovered a horrific scene. Thomas Midgley had gotten himself caught in the ropes of his invention, which had tightened around his throat as he slipped while attempting to turn over. He died as a result of being strangled by his own invention. The man responsible for the accidental release of the two most devastating chemicals in history died in a way that could be considered poetic justice. Thomas Midgley Jr. left behind a complicated legacy of inventiveness. He had intended to solve problems but instead created catastrophes. He sought to live an active life but constructed a device that ultimately confined him.